So, welcome everyone. I'm Alexander Mihalcea, and today we have one of the industry leaders, Margrith Lutschg Emmenegger, Managing Director of Trade Assets. Welcome, Margaret. How are you doing today?
Very good, thank you so far. I'm very happy to be with you today.
Yeah, and awesome. And also, I am so excited to have you on the podcast today, and I'm sure you're going to be of great value for the audience. Now, before we dive in, could you give us a quick overview of what Trade Assets does?
Well, Trade Asset is a platform that facilitates correspondent banking for banks to find new partners, to find financing for their letters of credits or other instruments. It's really facilitating the connections between financial institutions on a platform which, instead of, for example, if you are on a desk, you have a letter of credit and you want to place it, you want to find finance.
Yeah.
Instead of calling several people or sending emails out, you put it on the platform and then you get the quotes. So it's making life for correspondent banking much easier. It brings
Y-
people together. It creates appetite for risks which maybe others don't have, or it distributes the portfolios. So it's facilitating trade finance and predominantly correspondent banking.
Okay, that's really fascinating. And what inspired to create Trade Assets? Was there a specific moment or experience that sparked this journey?
Uh, we want to expand as much as possible with more and more banks. We have at the moment about 400 banks on the platform. Of course, we would want more than 1,000, if not more, because there is lots of banks out there. And we're trying to market. And my role is to really bring the European banks to the platform.
Yeah,
We have a lot of emerging market banks, and it's interesting to see that the emerging market banks are much more interested, much more, I wouldn't want to say aggressive, but much more welcoming new developments, whereas the European banks are laid back. They're not really so keen to try new things because their business
yeah.
is solid. So my role is quite a tough one in the trade asset, and I've not been extremely successful so far. But they still like me. I think the team still likes me.
Yeah. And also, could you share your journey in trade finance and what drew you in this field?
Well, I was most of my professional life in trade finance. I started in Zurich, Switzerland, which
Okay.
was actually the foundation of forfeiting, the discount without recourse of receivables.
Yeah.
So I was in Zurich developing that product with other banks, and at that time it was very, very successful, very active. It was used every day, and that brought me into trade finance. It fascinated me to find people who have appetite for certain risks which other people don't have, and to use this tool, which legally is very safe.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
the fact that this is predominantly promissory notes or bills of exchange, which means once a borrower has signed that instrument, accepted or issued, even if he receives no goods or faulty goods, he has to pay.
Yeah.
It's an abstract document, and therefore it's very strong legal document which you can use to, of course, invest, but also to trade. So distribution of assets is becomes very easy with this product. And that was
Okay.
so fascinating for me because I could see that people in certain areas liked certain risks and other areas not. For
Yeah. Right.
example, when I went to India to promote forfeiting, we had a local representative on the ground, and she was a lady, And she asked me, can you make a very exotic example, what you can do? And I said, what do you call exotic? And she said, well, Poland. Yeah. I thought Poland isn't exactly exotic, but yes, I can mention that. So when I was finishing, I said, we in forfeiting, we do 10 years Poland without any problems. And the audience went like, they must be crazy. And one guy actually stood up and said, if you are so crazy and you're going 10 years for Poland, how long would you go for Madagascar?
Yeah.
Madagascar? Maybe 6 months. And he said, but my Indian bank does it 3 years. I said, you see, now you have understood forfeiting very well.
Yeah. Right.
Because you know what's close to you, you're comfortable, or you're a bit more comfortable. And therefore, you're more willing to take the risk. And that's what we're doing forfeiting. We're finding the right partners. So this business has made me very happy. I was a long time in the forfeiting market. And then, of course, things developed.
Yeah.
And,
And
and I went into other areas because obviously now in today's world, and then we come maybe to that as well, but with all the IT developments, open account became much more active and needed.
yeah.
So open account is much more difficult to do because even if an invoice is accepted, it can still be disputed on the day when it's due.
Right.
And then you have no way to get the money, not even under the insurance policy. So it
Right.
is a much more challenging product. But we developed some good ideas. The Association of Factors Chain International and FCI
Yeah.
have, we merged. I was the chairperson of International Factors Group, and we brought them together because we needed one voice. It's not very intelligent to go and visit people and say we have two associations and you spend most of the time explaining the differences rather than the product. So we
Yeah.
decided we are making a one voice, and now it's FCI. And I think that helps a lot to make this product safer and better. But it's challenging, especially in emerging markets, but it's very much needed. It could be a huge
Right.
drive. And I think IT developments will help a great deal to make it better, more efficient, more safe, easier for banks to handle or finance companies to handle. So, these things are now changing the international trade market substantially. And
Yeah.
I'm
One
excited
hundred percent.
about it. But of course, now I'm retired from that field. I mean, I do training and I do education, but I'm not employed. I'm, self-employed,
Yeah.
if you call it that.
Right. 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 Right.
I
And
do
now.
choose what I like to do. I want to spend the time on important issues.
Okay. And now let's go back to when you first started. So, for example, what major challenges or gaps did you see in the market that made you think this needs to be solved?
Well, I mean, I think you have to adjust. It's not that we want to always change, but I think we have no choice. Yeah, if things develop, you have to be open to look at the new structures, the new ideas, and of course, I joined first Westdeutsche Landesbank, which was a leader in these products. They don't exist anymore. I left, but it's not because of that they're not existing anymore. And
Right.
then
Right.
I joined the bank, which was called Finbank in Malta. And we in Finbank, we only did trade finance. We didn't do anything else. We did not deal with equities. We did not deal with bonds. We did not deal with anything else but trade finance. But that we did very well.
Yeah.
And of
Right.
course, then we do a lot. We did a lot of structured finance, emerging market, commodity finance, and all that. And I was the CEO for 12 years.
Interesting.
Had a
Interesting.
wonderful time because you also
Yeah.
feel you do something good because you provide help to transactions, you create opportunities for people, and we had a wonderful team. So that was really my last official job. I retired in 12 in 14, 2014, and now
Okay.
I do my freelance work with what I like to do.
Yeah, right, right, right. And could you elaborate on why the existing solutions weren't meeting these needs?
So say that again. I'm not quite sure what you're asking me.
Yeah, right. So at the beginning, when you tackle this problem, could you elaborate why the existing solutions weren't meeting these needs?
Well, I think I was probably when at the very beginning, I was following my senior colleagues, learning from them, and then made my own decisions. But there were already quite a lot of people in Switzerland applying these new techniques, and I was lucky to got into that market, and especially as a woman allowed to be, quite in a senior position, because at that time that was even a bit more difficult than nowadays.
Yeah,
But I mean, you're learning from your colleagues. That's what I'm doing now. I try to share my experience and my knowledge with the younger generation.
right.
And I think that's what should happen. But of course, things are moving and you can never stand still. You have to learn about the new things which are going on.
Yeah, right, right, right. And for example, what role does blockchain play in modern trade finance?
Well, I think blockchain is being a little bit used in trade finance, not sufficiently. But of course, it would make data collection, controls of invoices, double finance, and so on would not be
Right.
possible anymore. So blockchain and maybe other tools as well would help to facilitate, make it safer, create an environment which is audited and
Yeah.
cannot be changed anymore. So once an invoice is lodged into a blockchain, it's there forever. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And then it gets a special identification. Yeah. And it cannot be used twice, which is a big risk in the open account, business. That double financing, that invoices are, you know, maybe three times financed and only once really due. So this with blockchain can be avoided. And also, of course, the collection of data, the collection of compliance documentation, which is a big issue for the banks, for the financial institutions, is much easier once you can apply blockchain.
Yeah,
But
right.
it's not yet enough used. I mean, it takes time. People have to get comfortable. Some are a little bit afraid, yeah. And also, it's a big investment, yeah.
Right.
You have to buy the knowledge into it and the programs and so on. So I think it's not used enough, but I'm sure it's here to stay, and it will
Yeah.
grow. It's essential, yeah. It just takes time. For me, it takes too much time, but I'm not a very patient person.
Right, right, right.
So I
And
think blockchain, and I think we can address AI as at the same level. Yeah.
yeah, right, right, right. And walk us through how trade assets addresses these challenges. What makes your approach unique?
Well, I mean, it would definitely help. It definitely helps to avoid, a lot of work in institutions. What is a little bit of a handicap is that the banks, especially in my area where I do the marketing, they are too comfortable. They don't
Yeah,
need to do a lot of business. They are to buy a few bonds, yeah, and collect the interest. They have forgotten that they have a social responsibility. A bank should take risks. A
Yeah.
bank should contribute to the economies of the country it's located in, and generally. And I think many of the European banks have forgotten their role. The emerging markets, much less. They're much more aware of their responsibility, or they need it because they need to do something to get the business done. Whereas in Europe, I think they're sitting on their hands. Yeah. Of course, there's also a problem of the due diligence, the regulations, all that. But I think it could be addressed if one would use more the IT developments which
Yeah.
are available. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And for example, I have a curiosity by that. When you talk to potential clients, what's the biggest misconception they typically have about what you do?
Well, I try to explain why it would be beneficial to them to join. Yeah. What they could achieve. And it's interesting. I was recently in Sweden visiting the Swedish banks.
Yeah.
And initially, there was quite a lot of interest. But then, of course, to actually do it, it didn't happen. Same with the Spanish banks. I live in Spain, so it's relatively easy for me to. But they, first they say, "Yeah, this sounds very interesting." We look at it, but then it goes under. So I, I must admit, I'm a bit lost how I can change that. So, but I will not give up so quickly. I will try and go out again. And obviously, we go also on conferences. We promote the
Yeah.
platform, and my colleagues as well. I mean, we're very successful in emerging markets. With most of the banks, 70% of our banks are emerging markets because they're much more willing to, or they need it much more to do something. Yeah.
Right. And also, could you share a specific success story of a client who saw significant results using your solution?
Specific clients, I mean, there are banks. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't really promote very actively with corporates, although we are in the process of establishing also a platform for corporates.
Yeah.
But they would be separate, and the corporates, would allow which bank can look at what they have. So we are in the development phase for that. I think it would make the platform more attractive to the banks if they knew there was a platform for corporates which they could access and see whether there is any interesting business there. So we're trying to, find solutions to accelerate our development. But of course, it's also an expensive exercise because we travel, we need
Yeah.
hotels, we need to go to conferences. So again, we have been looking a little bit for investors for trade finance and for trade assets, and I think we've had a few interested party, but it's not yet. It's only talk. But it would
Right.
be good if we could find more investors. It would also help.
Okay, that's fair. And for example, how do Middle Eastern markets approach trade finance differently?
I don't think we approach it differently. I think every institution has its own risk appetite,
Ah,
and
okay.
the approach varies from institution to institution. Some have totally exited trade finance because it's easier to buy some bonds. Yeah, you don't have to do
Okay.
any compliance. You don't have to do any checking of documentation, and therefore to buy some Italian or Greece bonds, which earn quite a nice yield, and that's important. If you have bonds from EU countries, in your book. You don't have to provide capital, which is a joke, really.
Yeah,
In
yeah,
fact, but if you do a letter of credit from, let's say, Greece, you have to provide at least 50% equity. So that hampers trade because equity is expensive. Equity is very scarce. And therefore, really, the new Basel IV rules, yeah, it's now four in place, hamper trade finance.
yeah.
They punish a bank to do trade finance. We tried to talk to the committee, but it hasn't changed. I mean, they have adjusted a little bit. In the past, it was 100% for a
Yeah.
letter of credit. Now it's only 50 or 20, depending on the country. But still, there is
Right,
equity.
right,
So I think these
right.
are issues which need to be addressed globally. I mean, we're trying as groups to talk to them, but it's not easy.
Okay. And now looking at the broader industry, what emerging technologies are you most excited about in trade finance?
Obviously, we are excited about every trade. Yeah, I mean, it always needs a buyer and a seller and
Yeah.
the underlying transaction. But clearly, of course, manufactured goods are, producing self liquidity. I mean, if you're buying a machinery that produces, let's say, tiles, yeah, then that machinery will, the next 10, 15 years, be good for that company. Yeah, provide
Okay.
capabilities to produce, to sell, and therefore make more trade. So these manufactured goods are, of course, more valuable for the global economy. But
Yeah.
also, commodity finance is important, and repeat business is very important. So I think one cannot truly say, you know, it's only that. But long term, manufactured goods, trucks, buses, machinery, they create
Yeah.
value.
Yeah.
They create a lot of value. That's where ECAs again are coming in because these products need long term funding. And that's sometimes difficult to find in the private market. But with the government support, it can be done. Yeah? Or easier done, it can be done more with less cost, more efficiently. So the ECAs could play a big role in that kind of development of market.
Okay. Okay. And for example, what advice would you give businesses looking to optimize their trade finance?
Well, I think talk to your banks, talk to the experts, find actually a corporate who wants to sell can probably create interest in a bank because they show them what they need. And
Yeah.
if they ask for it, the bank will maybe say, in this case, if there is appetite for this and I can make money, I will look at it. Yeah. Because the corporate is important for them. And the corporate will bring other business. They maybe foreign exchange income and so on. So
Yeah.
I think the corporates can drive what the banks will look at. If they have good trade opportunities and they talk to their banks, I think that could open the door that banks say, okay, if it's needed
Yeah.
and I can make money and this customer is already mine, then let me try. Yeah. So we always believe that corporates can push. And I think they do, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And as you wrap up, what's next for trade assets? Any exciting developments on the horizon?
Well, I think that the excitement is now coming from AI, yeah, to see what we can do to improve, to make it more efficient, to bring the cost down, to make it safer. And I think that really is where now the world will look. And I think we cannot avoid now. It's here to
Yeah.
stay. Fortunately, I only hope it's not going to be too much misused. People will take the good things out of it and not misusing it for bad stuff, which is possible. But for trade finance, I think this is going to be a key issue. And of course, I think this Sevilla commitment, this pledge, are important developments, but they are connected. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think that these people are going to look at AI, and and some of the entities which should be involved in this pledge and should play a big role, they will also look at AI as a tool to facilitate and to accelerate the
Yeah.
situation. So I'm quite excited. I think trade finance has still a good future.
Yeah, that's a great and very interesting point. And for listeners who want to learn more or potentially work with trade assets, what's the best way to get in touch?
Well, I mean, I'd be very happy to help them if they want education. But there are, of course, associations. I mean, if you, as a corporate or as a financial institution, want some help, there are people like the international uh, IFC, the World Bank, you can approach, ICC, one can approach and ask. A lot of individuals are available to help in a smaller scale, like myself, but
Yeah.
also for some of the products, Factors Chain International would definitely be happy to help those who have maybe a lot of factoring opportunities. So education, I think, is available.
Yeah.
You have to search a little bit, and it depends on your needs, but it's out there and it's available, and I think the quality is quite good.
Right, right, right. So, thank you very much for sharing those insights about you, about your company, and about the whole story. And thank you for this amazing podcast session.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And see you in the next episode.
Thank you.